It's season 4 here at On the Path, and we are answering this tough question today. If the pandemic is slowing down and physical isolations are over, why are so many still emotionally isolated? Well, we're tackling that question today. Coming up, we are speaking with author Shannan Martin, and she's the author of Start With Hello and Other Practical Ways to Live as Neighbors. Oh my goodness. We are going to be discussing the anxiety and the apprehension that people are feeling to reconnect in community, to come back to church, to talk with our neighbors, and this whole idea of silos and camps and how we can literally break down the wall. It is so good. It's going to galvanize us to move forward. Guys, available on all podcast platforms, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, or stream 24 hours in the castle. I'll see you on the path.
You're listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nemhard, brought to you by Fight for Freedom. Follow Cheryl Nemhard on all social media platforms.
Hey guys, welcome to On the Path. I'm so excited. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for pulling up a chair. Thank you for driving, doing all the things while you're listening or watching us. I'm so excited. We're on a journey, guys. We are growing, learning, and I think evolving and becoming more of what God has called us to be. And today we have an incredible teacher. She's going to be giving us some lessons of life and really talking to us about, I think, a topic that I think is so important right now, simple but powerful. And that is how to reconnect, how to reflect the heart of God in this really desperate time. And I want to introduce you to Shannan Martin. I'm so excited to have her. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She's an author of The Ministry of Ordinary Places, Falling Free, and now her newest book, Start With Hello. I love that title. Start With Hello and Other Simple Ways to Live as Neighbors. She's a speaker and writer who found her voice in the country and her story in the city. Oh, I love that. Shannan works as a cook at The Window, which is a local not-for-profit dedicated to feeding its community. She and her jail chaplain husband and their kids live in Goshen, Indiana. This is a family that is doing the work. They're walking the walk and talking the talk. Would you please give a warm On the Path welcome to Shannan? Hi, Shannan.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. And, as I said before, just pre-interview, anyone that is doing anything around people and has ministry where people are at the center, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Love it.
Because that is what matters the most. I would love to I think I want to start with, tell us all the things. Tell us a little bit of your story, how this book came to be, this whole journey. I just want to hear it all.
Yes, I'd love to. So I'll go back in time just a little bit. My family, at the time, there were 5 of us. Now there are 6 of us, but 10 years ago, we kind of pulled up our roots. We were living out in the country in what we felt was our dream farmhouse. We thought we would be there basically forever. And we just really felt a pull towards the neighborhood. And so we pulled up those roots and we moved into just a very overlooked and in many ways under-resourced neighborhood. And we've been there now for about 10 or 11 years. But at this point, I'll give you just a quick rundown of my family. My husband, Corey, does work full-time as the chaplain of the Elkhart County Jail. And then my 4 kids all came into our family through adoption. Our oldest, Robert, is 28 years old. He's out on his own. And then at home, we have 3 teenagers. Cal is 17, Ruby is 16, Silas is 14. And we've really been on a journey to understand, what does it mean to live as neighbors? Why does it matter? What is this whole thing about? Through the Bible we read, love God and love your neighbors. And we had to just really reconcile the fact that not only did we not know how to live as neighbors, how to love our neighbors, we really didn't know our neighbors at all. And this was all very new to us. So, once we found ourselves living in a more urban neighborhood context with people really close to us, we had to get to work. We had to make up for lost time and be about our re-education and really figure out what it was going to look like. And that really is the sort of the backstory to how we got to this book, Start with Hello. Because while my first two books also, I talk about neighboring, I talk about community, this is the book where I wanted to make it the most practical and really like a guide, just a simple, practical guide to answer the question, how do we do it? Like, how do we actually do it? And that's what Start with Hello is.
I love that. I can't wait to actually walk this through, because the reality is we are really still quite isolated. Maybe not so much physically, but something's happened. We are emotionally isolated. We are, to ourselves. And I'd love to know, when you started writing this book, what was your hope? What was your hope and dream for it?
Yeah, my hope was that we could find our way back to each other, or maybe even find our way to each other for the first time. I think our culture works really hard to keep us separated and divided and,
Talk
put into
about it.
these categories or these different camps. And in so many ways that can feel like the path of least resistance. It can feel easiest. But when we default to those, I go here, you go there, it's really to our detriment. We miss out on so much. So my hope is that this book would give us some really simple baby steps to come closer to each other. I think that's the essence of living as neighbors, is that, it means we come near. We come near to each other in mercy. We come near to each other in listening and in honoring each other. And yeah, I hope we can come through on the other side and realize, when we actually get to know the people around us, when we build those connections, we are actually safer and more secure.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We are safer and more secure. And let's begin to get those tools now. When we think about
Yeah.
the past 2 years, like, whoa.
Right.
The
What was
past,
that?
what was that? The past 2 years were beyond insane, painful,
Mhm.
isolating, polarizing, all the
Yeah.
things. And I
Yeah.
think in so many ways, we're still recovering from that, or
Yeah.
and also we feel like we're still in it.
Right.
It hasn't quite yet settled down. And you talked about the things in our life that cause us to find camps and to be
Yeah.
in silos. I know that you have adopted children, and I know that
Mhm.
some of these children are of the BIPOC community, which
Mhm.
holds a special, closer place in your heart as
Yeah.
you're watching camps and
Yeah.
racism
Yeah.
rising, polarization. What are the big lessons that are
Yeah.
coming up? Like, I feel like we should sit literally right now in this moment and just
Yeah.
listen from
Yeah.
someone who is raising children, who was doing the work in shelters, a husband that works in jails. Like,
Yeah.
we need to hear from
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we
I'd
need to know?
I'd love to talk about this. I am, and my husband and I, we are white parents to four non-white kids. So all four of our kids are in that BIPOC
Wow.
community.
Wow.
And it's, I think transracial adoption is really complex. It's complicated. I think sometimes we race to simplify things that are not meant to be simplified. And if I'm being honest, what has propelled me into this journey is watching my kids grow older. Specifically, our newest to our family child is Robert, who is our oldest. So, we adopted way out of birth order. When he was 19 years old, he came into our family. But watching
Wow.
him move through the world as a young Black man has been eye-opening in so many ways. It's been devastating in a lot of ways. It's been painful to be his mom and watch him struggle through and struggle against a culture that does not always want to love him the way he deserves to be loved. And at the
Mm.
same time, my three younger children were also getting older. So, now we're at the phase where our youngest is 14. they are, more in the world themselves. They know themselves better. Their ability to communicate and to name things that they see, to talk to us about experiences they have. All of this was happening, Cheryl, at the same time that, like you said, we're also, then heading into a pandemic, and then heading into, in a lot of ways, like new awarenesses for us as white folks, like new awarenesses about the conversations around racism. And so it was, and it is a lot. And I
Yeah.
have had to learn the hard way in some
Yeah.
ways to get much better at listening,
Mm.
to listen to my kids' experiences, even when they're very difficult to hear, to come to understand that all four of my kids, in so many ways, are immersed in microaggressions, that this is the air they breathe, this is the water they're in. And I have a distinct responsibility to steward them, and to walk this road with them.
Right.
And what that means, quite honestly, is I've got a lot I need to learn. I was not equipped in so many ways. And I've got to take that responsibility and get very serious about re-educating myself, and in so many ways educating myself on,
Right.
the essence of these conversations. It became painfully obvious along the way that I have a lot that I need to be learning, and that's on me. I've got to take up that work.
Wow. I am blown away by your answer. And I'm so thankful for your honesty and your candor.
Yeah.
It's a constant journey of learning, of listening, leaning
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for that confession, almost, of like,
Yeah,
hey,
it
I
is.
don't
Right.
I'm not always getting it right.
Right.
So when we talk about like these first steps, even in you, these sort of like hard first steps,
Yeah.
we have some first steps to make as a society. We've drawn some dividing lines. We've gone into our silos. We've closed our doors. We've lived in isolation. A lot of it mandated, but now that the mandates are lifting, we're
Yeah.
still having trouble.
Yeah.
Help us now, for
Yeah.
someone who is struggling to reconnect, to trust
Mhm.
across ethnic lines, to let the guard down. What do we do?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit it when you sort of implied we are all feeling a little rusty. Even if we felt like there was a time, I think for many of us it has just always felt hard. For some of us, maybe we feel like we kind of found our rhythm at some point and now we've lost it. We're all a little lonely. We're all a little kind of wary. We don't really know where we fit sometimes, or what's safe. We're afraid of making mistakes. That can be a good intention that ends up being a barrier between us and our neighbors, the people, our community around us, when we become so nervous that we're going to get something wrong that we just kind of wall ourselves off. So there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot that we're up against. I would say, just framing it back to, this isn't just me. I'm not the only one that feels like this is kind of awkward, kind of scary. We're all feeling that in different ways, and acknowledging that, acknowledging that it's going to be a little awkward. I wish I could have written a chapter about how not to be awkward in the world, but I don't have that answer. So the
Right.
best I can do is just say, like, let's just call it what it is up front. It's going to be a little awkward as we kind of fumble together back towards each other and back towards a connected sense of connection and community. We're
Right.
gonna make mistakes. We're gonna make blunders, but that's okay. We can get through that. We can survive a little bit of awkwardness, and then be willing to go first. To be willing to say, this is something that my heart is longing for. I think we are all longing for connection, even if we haven't quite admitted it to ourselves. I
It's
think
good.
that's what we want. We want to be part of, like, this fabric of each other. And sometimes that
Mm.
means we've got to be the first one to kind of put ourselves out there just a little bit. I talk and start with hello, many ideas for taking it slowly and taking those little tiny baby steps that feel maybe insignificant, but that actually stack up into actual relationships. So being willing to kind of to do that thing first, to invite the person to be vulnerable, to open our door, we just got to go first.
Oh, we just got to go first. That's it. We just got to go
Somebody's got to
first.
do it.
Somebody's got to do it. And so, there are those that are stumbling in, that have that are listening, that are watching, however they've kind of come into this conversation and they're thinking, okay, I can go first. What is step one? I know it seems really crazy, but okay, I actually have not been a good neighbor.
Yeah.
And I really want to try. I want to
Right.
reflect the light of God in more intentional ways. What are
Yeah.
some practical steps to be a good neighbor, as
Yes.
crazy as that sounds?
No, that's the whole book. That is the whole book in a nutshell. And I want to say, as a believer myself, we're familiar with these verses to love our neighbor, but I think there was part of me that assumed for a long time that as long as I wasn't hating my neighbor, that counted as loving them. And I've come to
Wow.
see that stood in my way of really actually connecting with the people around me. So there's just a little more to it, but the good news is it's really simple and it's really attainable. I would say the very first, most practical, simple step is that we become people who are committed to paying attention. And I mean that in the most literal sense. The way that I practice becoming more attentive is I kind of fell into this, honestly, accidentally, but it stuck. I pay attention to the sky every day. I try to notice what's going on up above me. I notice the art that's happening around me. Our creator is wonderful and we get to live in this beautiful place. But as I've become more persistent and intentional and just something as simple and basic as noticing the sky, it has translated down to street level so that I'm
Mm.
also learning to notice the people around me better. And I'm
Wow.
noticing rhythms and I'm noticing just the simple ways that we can connect. And when we begin to pay attention, that's when suddenly these opportunities emerge where we know we can reach out and go first, and just say hello. It
Yeah.
really does start with hello and it builds from there. So maybe that's where it begins and maybe it stays at this kind of basic, small talk, chatting about the weather. I don't think small talk is the scary thing that we have made it into. I think it's a block. It's a building block into deeper relationship that happens slowly over time. So that's my first step, is learn to be someone who pays attention to the place where you are.
Wow. Learn to be someone who pays attention to the place where you are. I love that, because sometimes it's just that simple, bold step of hello and conversation that people have been waiting for on the other
Yeah.
side. They've been waiting for it, just not knowing how to navigate. I love that. What would be one more good step for us?
Yeah, one of my favorite tips in learning to be neighbors, and I use the word neighbor very loosely. I think a neighbor is anyone whose life intersects with ours. And I also think in the context of faith, our neighbor, is kind of, if we're part of the kingdom of God, our neighbor is kind of everyone. So I'm not just limiting this to the people to the right and to the left of us, but I do think there's something really magical and powerful about being known by the people next door, the people right on our block or on our street. I think there's a certain level of security and fun that comes when we start to trust each other a little bit. So my very favorite tip is to ask for help, to be the person who puts ourselves out there a little bit. It's humbling, and it sounds like maybe, it sounds like it could be kind of challenging, but to be able to say, I'm heading out of town for the weekend. Could you grab my mail? Or, when we need a rake, instead of buying a rake, hey, could I borrow your rake? What happens when we do this is that it lets the person on the other side of this conversation know that they can turn around and need us back. And if we can fall into that rhythm of just needing each other in the daily, ordinary moments of life, that is true connectedness.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Oh, this is so good. I wish I had a notebook and a pen. I'm thinking, oh, I need this for myself.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to ask you this question. This is going to take us a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
So I hope that you can track with us as we go. Here's my thought. I believe that storms, crisis, like those
Mhm.
rock bottom moments, are our greatest teachers. I think that it's in
Yeah.
those moments we learn so much about ourselves, who we are, what we have, the resiliency, the strength we didn't know we had. It teaches us who God is. And sometimes I think
Yeah.
we live as believers in this like surfacey kind of head knowledge, sing
Yes.
about it, talk about it, hear about it. But it doesn't crystallize until we get into those really rock bottom moments. And then,
Yeah.
fortunately or unfortunately, if you want to know who your friends are or aren't,
Hmm. Yeah.
go through a real serious crisis and
Yeah.
just watch who galvanizes, who runs away.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you, Shannan, like I can't even imagine just raising, especially a teenage sort of young adult,
Yeah.
adopted person, square one, day one at that age.
Yeah.
The work that your husband does daily, the hard stories, the things he encounters
Hmm.
in jail chaplaincy.
Yeah.
You, as you work in, it's a food bank or like a shelter. Is it
Yeah, like a soup kitchen type
like a
of
soup
place.
kitchen?
We serve a hot lunch every day. Yeah.
I love that. So, to those who are low income, marginalized, impoverished, and so on, I would love to know what have you learned about yourself, God, and
Hmm.
others in
Yeah.
crisis?
I love that question. I I know for sure that anything I know about living as a neighbor, I learned from my neighbors. So, once you write a book about living as neighbors, people can kind of lump you into like, oh, she knows, she's the best neighbor ever. And that's not at all how I feel. I am an introvert and a lot of this does not come naturally for me. I have to be intentional and push myself.
Right.
But I also know that all of this knowledge, any knowledge that I do have, has come to me secondhand. It has come to me in relationships with the people close to me, many of whom have been in jail. They've been incarcerated. They're rebuilding after incarceration. They're struggling through generational poverty, the effects of racism. The list goes on and on. The ways that I have learned to lean on each other through these
Mm.
folks, the ways I have been embraced by these folks. There's one of the most special stories for me that illustrates this really well is when I was invited, my family was invited to our next door neighbor's daughter's birthday party. And they're a Spanish speaking family. A lot of my neighbors are. I do not speak Spanish. I can cobble together a few basic things and that's it. And we were the only non-Spanish speaking folks at this gathering, and there was a moment towards the end where they brought the cake out and they all started kind of chattering in Spanish, and it felt like a moment where like, are they talking about us? Maybe they are. And they had their short little conversation and then they started singing happy birthday in English so that we could be part of
Oh,
it.
wow.
And to think of that kind of hospitality,
Yeah.
that kind of, putting us above themselves at their own daughter's birthday party. I mean, these are the lessons that I've learned, that
Yeah.
God comes near to us kind of disguised as each other. He shows
Yeah.
he never leaves us, but he's God is close to us through our neighbors. And in turn, God can be near our neighbors through us if we are willing to be on both sides of this equation. We ask for what we need and we offer what we can. If we can get better at doing those two things,
Yeah.
and that's going to grow, that's going to look different over time. But if we can commit to those two things, we are on the path to living as neighbors and to having true connection in our lives.
Oh my goodness. You said that God connects to us through neighbors, and it's almost like God disguised as the other. And I
Yeah.
love this idea of every person that we meet is this wonderful opportunity to not just reflect the heart of God, but to draw near and there's a blessing there.
Yeah.
There's a learning there. There's something that's gonna draw us closer to God if we just lean in and we're not afraid.
Yeah, right. And not only to reflect the heart of God, but to be eager to see the heart of God reflected
Come
on the
on.
faces around us.
So
It
good.
just has to go both ways. If it
So
doesn't go
good.
both ways, then
Yeah.
there can be some kind of funky power dynamics there that aren't going to help
Love.
us, but we've just got to be on
So
both
good.
sides.
So good. In fact, would you say that we many times receive more than we give?
At 100%. That's my story. And I feel a little sheepish. Like I'm here kind of, I'm honored to be able to write down some of what I've learned because I have seen the ways my neighbors have changed my life. They have changed, and I'm going to put my kids in with my neighbors. These people around me have changed the ways I see the world. They've changed the
Beautiful.
ways I see myself in the world. They've changed the ways I see God. I mean, if we can really draw near to each other rather than kind of keeping our distance from each other, it will change everything.
Oh, guys, listen, you need this book. I need this book. My goodness. We are speaking with the one and only Shannan Martin. She is the author of Start with Hello and Other Simple Ways to Live as Neighbors. You need to pick up this book. It's available everywhere and anywhere. And by the time this hits, it's out there, y'all. Go grab
Yes.
it. Go grab it. Listen, Shannan, I was going to say, how can we stalk you, but don't be afraid.
No, I'm here for that.
How can we track with you? How can we keep in touch and just learn
Yeah.
more about what you're doing?
Yeah. You can find me most days on Instagram and Twitter. I love them both for different reasons at Shannan Writes. And you can also kind of keep up with what I'm doing, subscribe to my free newsletter, kind of get some, see what my family's up to, all those things. There are links to the books, all the things at shannonmartin.com.
Oh, I love it. So, 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 so good. Well, we've come to the surprise question.
Ooh, I can't wait.
I love this. I get to do this at the end. It's one of my favorite moments. I get to do it at the end of every podcast. And what's lovely
I'm so
about this
nervous.
moment, no, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. What's lovely is that every answer it's not like the other. It's different. It's fresh. It's new. And I love it. It never repeats. So finish
Ooh,
this sentence.
okay.
Finish it in light of our conversation, kind of that as the backdrop.
hmm
Finish a sentence. It's time for what?
It's time for each other. It's
Ooh.
time. It's time for us to stop looking inward quite so much and to turn around and see what's happening in the world around us, in the lives around us, to be tender for the sake of each other, to learn better and to do better for the sake of each other. It's time.
Oh, it's so, so good. Okay. I'm going to flip it on you. You ready? Here we go.
Yes.
What is it not time for, Shannan?
It's not time for silence in the face of injustice. I mean, that's just part of my journey and part of what I'm learning is that our silence does us no favors. There's a time for listening. There's a lot of time for listening, and we need to get better at that. But when we see injustice happening around us, when we see fracture, when we see people struggling in ways they don't have to struggle, and systems that make it difficult for people to flourish, all these things, it requires us to use our voice, to stand with the people who are struggling or who have the least amount of power, and to really meaningfully be with them in that, and to be prepared to kind of put ourselves out there for that.
Oh, Shannan, thank you so much. Like, that is the perfect note to end on. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
thankful. Thanks for spending some time with us. I felt like we were walking and talking there.
I know, I loved it. I loved
Yeah,
it
it
so
was
much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, guys. And once again, please, please pick up this book, guys. Start with Hello and Other Simple Ways to Live as Neighbors with
Here's
Shannan Martin. There it is.
That's what it looks like.
Come on. Shannan, thank you so much for being on the path, and
Yes.
thank you for helping us make the first steps of being a good neighbor.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Well, I want to thank Shannan Martin for that conversation. I needed that. I know some of you did too. It was so, so good. Guys, we need to do the work of connecting, the work of reaching across dividing lines, of not only reflecting the heart of God, but as Shannan said so perfectly, being met with the heart of God. It's not just that we have something to give, but there's so much that God wants us to receive, and we will get that from connecting one with the other. I encourage you to start with hello, reach across those dividing lines, say hello to someone today. Let's build community and rebuild neighborhood one person at a time. Until then, keep living, keep loving, keep learning, and let's keep saying hello. But for me, goodbye. I'll see you again on the path.
You're listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nembhard, brought to you by Fight for Freedom. Please like, download, and subscribe. This has been an Exousia Media production.